All right, Axiom Pearl versus Axiom. Huge question we've been getting a lot here lately. For this test, we have Steve Klimpkin, our throwbot, and here's his stats. His PAP is 5 1/4 over, 1/4 inch down, 18 miles an hour, 325 RPMs, which fits him nicely in that tweener category. So he's going to represent a very large portion of our clientele. Here's the test pattern he's bowling on. It is Taj Mahal at 38 feet. It's one of his favorite length type of patterns, 24 mils and relatively flat at 3.11 to 1. Here are his two balls. They are both drilled with the same exact layout, 4 3/4 by 5 by 1.5. Steve really likes his short pin buffers and his kind of medium length pin distances, so these should roll pretty well for him. All right, starting with the Axiom Pearl. We asked Steve to line up to get a strike with his Axiom Pearl, and then we're going to try and duplicate that line with the Axiom Solid. Here's the shot. Pretty good. Here's the data to support it. So breakpoint 43 feet, entry position, perfect, 16.85, entry angle, 5.5 degrees. Here's the shot, repeating the same exact line with the Axiom. And just as you would suspect, the Axiom goes high, actually starts picking up way sooner, pretty much back here at the arrows. Breakpoint closer to him, closer to the foul line, entry position, whole 4 boards difference between it and the Axiom Pearl. It's kind of what we would expect out of 2 different variations of this cover stock. Now the interesting thing as we progress, you're going to notice about NEX is that the entry angle stays relatively close, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the design compatibility aspect. Next, we asked Steve to get lined up with his Axiom. So naturally, just as you would guess, he's going to be a little bit deeper. He's going to set it down a little bit more into what Kegel refers to as the launch pad up here. The oil is super thick. Here's the data to support that shot. So at 42 feet, entry position, back at the 16.5 board, and entry angle 5.24 degrees. Then we got Steve to line up with the Axiom Pearl, and just as you would think, a little bit light in the pocket, little mixer 2, and here's the data. So a little bit longer breakpoint for Steve, a little less entry angle and a little less entry position, but as far as entry angle is concerned, NEX still generates a lot, even if you aren't in the proper area of the lane. So at 0.03 degrees is really not that much in the long term of things. Our next tester, Alex Hoskins, we're going to get him doing the same thing. So at 16 miles an hour, 350 RPMs, throws a little bit slower, a little bit more revs, so we should see quite a bit of difference between the 2 balls that he's going to test. We got Alex lined up on a 42-foot pattern this time. He likes a little bit longer patterns. His slower speed sees the lane a little bit earlier than Steve since he throws it a bit harder, and his more rev rate should help get that ball to come back no problem. So just like Steve, we got Alex to drill 2 balls. This is very common, one of Alex's favorite layouts, so we see him use quite a bit. Pin way high, 5 inches from PAP, and a 2-inch buffer is one of his benchmark type layouts. So getting lined up with the Axiom Pearl first. Here is Alex's shot. Great shot, splits the 8-9, nothing wrong with that. So he's a little bit further right of Steve. That's to be expected because it is a little bit longer pattern. So at 42 feet, entry position 17.5, which is absolutely perfect, which is what you want to see. A little bit more entry angle because the ball's his slower rev rate higher, his slower ball speed is higher rev rate. It's getting that ball to turn quite hard on the back. So he did the same exact thing, got lined up with the Axiom. Naturally, ball goes high. It's to be expected out of a solid sanded versus a polished pearl. But still, again, the entry angle not that far off from those 2 shots, which is pretty important to remember, again, for later on during the discussion. We asked Alex to get into his strike zone with the Axiom. Great shot, nothing wrong with that at all. Here's the data. Right back into the pocket of the 16.9 board. That's awesome. Got Alex to line up with the same exact shot path with the Axiom Pearl, and that one actually came back and struck. Even though his only entry position was 14.7, his entry angle got that ball back to the pocket and still was able to mix him up enough to confidently strike probably the next shot with a very minor adjustment.